A risk assessment's a long, bureaucratic, drawn out process of loads and loads of paperwork. Today we're going to teach you how to do a real risk assessment, and we're going to teach you how to do it yourself. Let's go. What's up guys, welcome back to Rebranding Safety. I'm James McPherson, and Rebranding Safety is a YouTube channel and podcast making health and safety simple to help you save lives and save money. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss another episode. Today we're going to talk about how to do a task-based risk assessment, or how to do a risk assessment. If you have come over to this channel and you've come across the how to assess risk, the concept video, you might be sitting there thinking, well, surely this is exactly the same video. No, is the answer to that. Well, what's the difference then? Well, basically, I fully appreciate that when we think about a risk assessment, we think about a tangible document, a physical piece of paper that is a risk assessment, and that's fine. The concept video is the thought process of assessing risk and making risk-based decisions. This video is how to produce a risk assessment. Essentially, the two go hand in hand. We've got the document and the concept, and they do go together, and you will need to have watched the concept video or go and watch it after this to help you out at a couple of key points. Now, there's another thing for me to address before we move on, and that is the actual document you're using. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of different types of risk assessment documents or templates out there. There's quantitative versus qualitative, and I'm not sure if I've said that right, which we did a whole podcast on. So if you haven't checked that out, go over to your favourite podcast platform and you can listen to that discussion as well. And basically what they are is where we're talking about ones that use a number scoring system and ones that don't use a number scoring system. You might have got given a template when you're just the operations manager. You're not a health and safety professional. My wife used to work for a business and she was an operations manager, and she was given a template. Here you go, here's some guidance, here's a template, off you go and do a risk assessment. And that's fine. So many of these templates are done in so many different ways. You can get ones off HSE as well. And if you're sitting there with a blank piece of paper and you're not sure, email rebrandingsafety@gmail.com and I'll send you a template. The key things on a health and safety risk assessment template are identified hazards, identify the people at risk, existing control measures, so what you're already doing to reduce the risk, and what you need to do to make it better. That's the base minimum. So if you want to do it yourself and you want to make a template, that's the base minimum of what you need. But easiest way is to go on HSE website and download one on there. So we're going to break down the 5 steps to produce you a physical, tangible risk assessment. So at the end of this, you'll be able to go away and you'll be able to produce a documented risk assessment. Remember, if you need to make risk-based decisions, which you will as part of this process, go and check out how to assess risk, the concept video as well. Let's get on to the whiteboard. Okay, so identify hazards is step number 1. So we need to get out, go have a walk around with our team, and we need to spot hazards essentially. So what are we looking for? We're looking for absolutely anything at the moment. So we're not really writing anything down. You can help yourself by taking notes, that's fine. But we're just going around trying to spot hazards. So we're looking at trip hazards. We're considering chemicals, manual handling risk, shafts, hot surfaces, fire risk, trip hazards, changes in levels, so falls. Remember, working at height, it's not just you at height, but it could be like a change in levels, you're on like a balcony or something like that. Built-in hazards like asbestos or legionnaires. You have environmental hazards like noise, business hazards like stress, absolutely everything. We just want to consider everything for now. Moving vehicles, forklift trucks, like things like that, absolutely everything. Just highlight every single hazard. Okay, so now we're going to do exactly the same but looking at people. So we're going to identify who can be affected by the hazards that we've just highlighted. So we need to consider staff, we need to consider maybe vulnerable staff, disabilities, young people, customers, visitors, contractors. Other things to consider as well is kind of like language, people that might not be able to understand what you're saying or understand written English. Consider new staff. Also consider old staff. They bring different problems essentially. New staff being not sure, not aware of the business, how we do it, not aware of the surroundings, and old staff stuck in their ways potentially. Okay, so we've gone around the business, we've spotted all our hazards and we've identified who's at risk. Now we need to basically make a decision on what we need to do to reduce these risks. There is such a thing called a hierarchy of control, which essentially is a tool to guide you on how to work through the kind of mitigations of these risks, so how to make it less risky. At this point, it's worth mentioning that this is where the how to assess risk, the concept video, comes into play. This is where we really start to think about reasonably practicable, reasonably foreseeable, and all these crazy terms, which essentially means we're going to balance the cost versus the risk. So we're trying to think of what's a reasonable step to take to reduce the risk, and what's a practical step to take to reduce the risk. And essentially that's reasonably practicable. But remember, go and watch that other video, how to assess risk, the concept, and that'll really help you out here. I have simplified the hierarchy of control here to 3 simple sections. Now you can Google hierarchy of control and it will come up on Google, and it's real simple. So first things first, at the top of the triangle is what we need to do. We need to try and eliminate the risk. That's the ideal situation. That's safety heaven, for example. So we want to try and just get rid of the risk. So here's an example. So when I worked in manufacturing, we essentially used to extrude sheets of plastic. So they would come out like pieces of foam and they would wind all the way around the machine. And when you get a break in that line, you needed to join them together. We used to glue them together with a heat gun, kind of like a really hot hairdryer essentially. This had risks inherently in it. It was hot to touch, obviously it was really hot, but actually we ended up having quite a significant fire. So we thought we needed to remove that heat source from there. Is there a way to do that? And we found out there was a way to do that. We could thread the 2 sheets together with basically a big plastic needle. And we ended up doing that, and it was really effective, and it was just worked really well. So we eliminated the risk of ignition, but we also eliminated the risk of burns as well. Other things we could do, so if you look at that hierarchy of control, like I say, it's much bigger, and they will talk about substitute. So I think that's the same in eliminate. So you can either reduce or completely eliminate the risk. Say for example with a chemical, you might be using something like white spirit, which is really flammable, and you might be able to replace that with a more suitable and safer, cleaner product. A good example of that as well is Tipex. When they first made Tipex, it was really dangerous. Can't remember why, but it was just really dangerous. Now it's not. We use it absolutely everywhere. So they substituted that chemical with something else that did the same job but was less harmful. Next step is control. So we can't eliminate and we can't substitute. We've got it. 9 times out of 10, this is the case that we're stuck with, because those things are there for a reason. So we've really had a good conversation about eliminate, we can't do it. Now we need to control. This breaks into so many different areas. So we're essentially trying to mitigate the problem. So how do we do this? We can engineer. We can put engineer controls in. So if you've got machinery, for example, you would put fixed guards in place so you physically can't come in contact with the hazard. You might have admin controls like your documented risk assessment, your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, your safe working systems, things like that. They're admin controls. You'd also have things like training that upskill your workers so they become familiar with the machine. And then finally, in essence, the least effective, but it should definitely be your last port of call, PPE. So PPE, what's PPE? Personal protective equipment. So things like gloves, so like you could have like cut-proof gloves or heat-proof gloves. You have safety glasses, hard hats, the infamous high vis that protects us from everything. And it can go all the way up to real high risk kind of stuff like working on height harnesses and respiratory protection equipment and things like that. Now a lot of people will say, in their opinion, that you do the control stuff and then you just put PPE in as well. I think you should really consider whether that's worthwhile. I do think that overusing PPE is having more of a negative effect on businesses than it is positive. So it's the least effective. Make sure that if you're using it, you do actually need it, but don't go to PPE as your first port of call. Start at the top and work your way down. And like I said, if you Google hierarchy of control, there is a much bigger version. If you're as sad as me, you can go look at it. Okay, so now we're nearing the end of this process. We've got to record our significant findings. Now's the time where we're actually going to start writing in our tangible document, in our actual risk assessment. Because by law we have to record our significant findings. Remember, significant findings, not everything. So you'll have a long list of hazards and a long list of people that are at risk from those hazards, but they're not all significant. Now the key point here is that I actually can't give you any examples of what a significant finding is, because it's based on my perception of risk and your perception of risk. And this is why it is so important to do these risk assessments in a team, because I've never worked with chemicals, for example. And I watched Breaking Bad and saw that apparently you can buy a chemical that would melt all the way down to the ground floor. It scared the living daylights out of me. But I was born and raised in my health and safety career in manufacturing, and the machines were just miles long, and for me, meh, nothing. So my perception of risk of machinery is much lower. It's a low risk job, but my perception of risk of chemicals is really high. So I would try, if I'm risk assessing with somebody that working with chemicals, and make sure I've got someone there who understands that chemical so that they can mitigate against my high perception of risk. And that's why it's so important that you do these as a team. Remember, record your significant findings. It's a legal requirement, but it doesn't mean record everything. So I don't want to see, not that I'm ever going to see your risk assessments, but I don't want to see 20 pages long. And if you do that, it's only going to be a detriment to your health and safety culture. To finish this point off, if you're the business owner, then you're the responsible person. You're the duty holder. And it is down to you to decide what is significant. What is a significant finding to you? What acceptable risk are you willing to take in your business? And that's on you to decide, and that's the beauty of the UK law. It enables you to make these decisions. Okay, so review. So now we've got our risk assessment. Essentially we've finished it, but we need to work out when we're going to review the risk assessment. So the long and short of it is you should just be doing it all the time. It should be a live document in theory, and that is a key thing to consider when you're deciding on what your significant findings are, because if your risk assessment is 20 pages long, it's going to be difficult for you to review it, and then it becomes a long process to review. And also it's worth noting what a review is. A review, in my opinion, varies depending on what we'll go into next, which is like the changes, but depending on what's different, depends on how much you review it. A review could just be you reading through and just going, yeah, there's no changes, and that's fine. But you need to record that to protect yourself. When do you actually need to review these risk assessments? Commonly, everyone reviews them annually. Now that was guidance that was given out, I believe, by the HSE, and the reason for that was because normally within a year there's a change within your business, so annually is a good practice. And that's fine. If you want to go with that, that's fine. But legally you are required to review it after an accident and after a significant change. So that significant change makes it no longer valid. It makes that risk assessment pointless because there's something in there that doesn't make sense, it doesn't match up to your business. So that's when you need to review it. So if you're doing it constantly in your business, so if you're going to say, right, we're going to do something in operations, we want a new product, for example, what does the risk assessment say? If that's just your general reaction, it becomes a live document, and that's fine. If an auditor or an inspector comes in and they see you doing that, that's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. We would all love to see that. So remember, after a significant change and after an accident are the two key times when you need to review your risk assessment. Okay guys, that was how to do a task-based risk assessment. I hope you found that useful. Let's get into my top tips then. Remember that safety is a social exercise. I didn't understand that when I first read it, and if you flick back to my other video where I book reviewed Andrew Sham's Accidents to Zero, you'll see where I say I don't understand it. Now I think I get it. It's a social exercise, it's a conversation, it's a group of people talking about how to be safe. What a beautiful concept. So remember that and see if you can bring that into your workplace. Tip number 2. Essentially, it's reiterating the fact of why there is 2 videos. It's really key that you understand the difference between the concept and the tangible document. You don't have to try and control and record everything in your business. You need to record the significant findings by law, but morally in your business, you need to feel like you've controlled and managed and mitigated the risk in your business. You know, as a human, you probably want to do that. And I think if you understand the concept of assessing risk and your teams understand the concept of assessing risk, you'll probably do a really good job there. So really focus on that kind of reasonably practicable kind of mindset. Don't try to control everything. Have an appetite for risk. And that's okay to be able to accept risk. In other areas, financial world, we take risk, and it's celebrated. And I'm not saying, let's go and take risk tomorrow with safety, because we're resulting in people getting harmed. But let's not try to eliminate everything, because it's just not possible. And we actually end up making it more dangerous, in my opinion. So that was top tip number 2. This video has been how to do a task-based risk assessment. I've been James McPherson. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give us a like. Drop us in the comments below whether you do your own risk assessments. If you do, what template do you use? I'd be really interested to know. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to click subscribe and the bell so you never miss another episode. See you in the next episode. Safe.